Today's episode is brought to you by Positively Productive Systems, whose mission is to be the antidote to your stress and to provide compassionate productivity resources and coaching that help you heal and achieve. Be sure to check out both free and paid resources at positivelyproductive.com/resources.
Breathwork essentially is just intentional breathing exercises. So you're going through and you are intentionally using a breath pattern to bring energy in and to move emotions through into your body. What that's doing in your mind is it's settling it and it's allowing you to drop into your body to feel not only the physical symptoms that may come up for you, but also the emotional symptoms that are happening. Where in your body the anxiety is lying, where does it come up for you, and what portion of your body, because it feels differently for everyone. Where is that trauma lying? And I'm not talking about like intense trauma that we would normally think of. I'm talking about just day-to-day trauma that we have that turns into conditioning that we now live by. Breathwork, bringing that energy in and learning how to breathe properly through the emotions and through the traumas and through the way that we're feeling leads us to healing, because the only way we can heal is if we face the music head on.
You're listening to the Positively Living Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zawrotny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a coach certified in time and stress management, helping clients make space for what matters most in their lives. Join me each episode and we'll talk about decluttering, stress management, habits, personalized productivity, gratitude, and so much more. I understand the overwhelm of life because I'm a wife, mom to kids and cats, and a former caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. Are you someone who wants to do meditation, but you're just not sure it's your thing? Or maybe you're looking for a more natural approach to calm stress and anxiety. Either way, this episode is for you. Today, I welcome Sarah Novak to the Positively Living Podcast. Sarah is a breathwork facilitator, coach, speaker, and entrepreneur. Currently, she is studying to become a clinical hypnotherapist, Reiki healer, and NLP practitioner. Her mission is to eradicate human suffering by bringing awareness back to the breath. Sarah teaches women to clear stress and anxiety using the power of the breath and rewiring the subconscious to break through into ultimate self-healing. What I love about this approach is how seriously simple it is. And you know how I feel about things being simple. We already have the tools to practice this technique. We know how to breathe. Yes, I did ask her the question that was at least on my mind. Is there a way to do this wrong? Ask me how I know to ask that question. Spoiler alert, she said no. But it does have a small caveat, so be sure to listen for her full response to that. We discuss what breathwork is and how it differs from other forms of breathing you might have experienced, such as in yoga. Sarah brings up so many important topics connected to breathwork and why we want to do it. One of the biggest is trauma, a topic I discussed on episode 29 with Mallory Jackson. Mallory talks about the different ways trauma expresses itself and the modalities we can use to address and heal it, which ties in beautifully to breathwork. In this conversation, Sarah and I also touch upon grief and emotions and all the things that are connected to why we would want to practice breathwork. So you may also want to catch episode 8 on toxic positivity and episode 14 on growing through grief. Sarah not only shares how and why breathwork is good for us, she gives specific examples of types used for different people and different needs, and walks you through a specific technique you can use anywhere, anytime during the day to calm your body and mind. Without further ado, let's chat with Sarah. Welcome, Sarah Novak, to the Positively Living Podcast. I'm so delighted to have you join me today.
Oh, I'm so grateful to be here. This is going to be a beautiful conversation.
I would love it if you would tell us a bit about who you are, who you help, and what makes you light up.
I'm Sarah Novak. I am a breathwork facilitator, and I have been doing this for about a year now. And I kind of fell into it from when I started my meditation practice. And I had some struggles with meditation and it just making my anxiety so much louder. So I decided to, after searching and searching, I kind of realized that I was really disconnected from my body and I was trying to heal my mind without healing my body at the same time, without healing the responses within my body. So after searching, I found breathwork. And after doing it on myself, I tried it and I went to the facilitator training program, fully just there to learn some things for myself. I wasn't even really prepared or wanting to go there to train other people or to teach this to other people until I got to the end of that week. It was a week-long retreat where we were breathing for, 1 to 2 hours a day, kind of broken up. And after that week, which was 5 days of a transformation within myself and how I felt and how more connected I became after that, and how I was able to collect myself and how I felt and how I could manage my anxiety that way, I was like, okay, we are onto something here. I have to bring this into the world. So it took me a while to kind of figure out what and how that looked like, but now I'm here and that's what I am. So breathwork lights me up. Healing on a full basis, not only just mind, but body as well, reconnection, and honestly, just helping people live a more centered life is really what I'm all about.
It's beautiful. And when you and I connected at first over this, what we really connected on was this idea that it's trauma informed. And I think that's so important. I had a fantastic episode with Mallory Jackson on a trauma informed life. And this idea, it's both courageous and encouraging kind of concept to think we all have trauma. We're all dealing with it and it's okay. It's varying degrees. Our responses vary, but it's so important to understand that we have it and to treat it. And one of the things she does touch upon was the different modalities and how we need to calm ourselves. And so I think it's so important that we talk about mindfulness and meditation and we understand the impact it can have. But what I love about what you do is it's like fast tracking in a way, right? To the physical responses that we're having.
Yep.
And the other thing I love about it is that it's science backed. So I would love to start with basically really what is breath work and how does it differ from what we think of in yoga and meditation, and what is the science saying about it?
Breathwork essentially is just intentional breathing exercises.
Okay.
So you're going through and you are intentionally using a breath pattern to bring energy in and to move emotions through into your body. What that's doing in your mind is it's settling it and it's allowing you to drop into your body to feel not only the physical symptoms that may come up for you, but also the emotional symptoms that are happening. Where in your body the anxiety is lying, where does it come up for you, and what portion of your body, because it feels differently for everyone. Where is that trauma lying? And I'm not talking about intense trauma that we would normally think of. I'm talking about just day-to-day trauma that we have that turns into conditioning that we now live by. So trauma can be disguised as anything that's happening to you where it has stung you and where you have decided to be like, ooh, that really hurt me. I'm going to change my life now because of this one circumstance. That's trauma. So when we were talking about how trauma manifests in the body and how that shows up as an emotional response in the body, we have to understand emotional well-being, and that breath work, bringing that energy in and learning how to breathe properly through the emotions and through the traumas and through the way that we're feeling leads us to healing, because the only way we can heal is if we face the music head on. That's essentially what breathwork is. You are breathing a breath pattern for a specific amount of time. And the science of breathwork it's a new study. There's a lot of things that have come about on it, but a lot of the things are clarity, serenity, and then mindfulness as far as calming anxiety, calming stress, being more centered and grounded. There's a lot of other benefits as well. A lot of the same benefits that meditation has. is the same as breath work, because when we are breathing this intentionally, we do get into a meditative state. So we get the same benefits as meditation, but the difference is that we are focusing on a breath pattern rather than focusing on being quiet.
Right. And so it's really coming at a similar benefit from a different angle, which I absolutely love. So if you are feeling like meditation is not for you, which is something you experienced personally, this is another way we can do it. And I'm going to go ahead and assume that there are similar benefits to being in this state, in this calm state for the body, as it would be if you were to lie down and take a nap. And so again, it's all about calming the stress that's happening. So what is it doing, like physically to us when we get into these breathing patterns?
It's changing the chemical systems inside your body. So when you're bringing in this much true oxygen, so by nature, we are shallow breathers. We don't think about breathing. The body just breathes us. We don't ever think about intentionally bringing energy into our body. So when we switch that, and now we're bringing on all this oxygen into our system, it changes the chemicals within our system, and it emits different neurotransmitters into our brains to allow us to calm down. It's almost like a chemical release that happens. So a lot of serotonin gets released. A lot of these chemicals in our body gets released because we're bringing in pure oxygen and for a specific length of time.
Right. Yeah. Anytime you have increased oxygen, it's going to change the body in a variety of ways. The other thing that you were describing in terms of like where you're feeling the trauma, the tension, whatever you want to call it, it seems to me that this offers an opportunity to practice focus and self-awareness. Right?
Self-awareness is a big one, but it's not that we're really going in to be self-aware. It's that we learn self-awareness through the practice, because we realize like, whoa, I had no idea that my sadness was this big. I had no idea that my inability to avoid my ability to avoid conflict was bringing up this feeling inside of me. Or I had no idea my anxiety was being placed in my heart or in my stomach or in my throat. And that's why I have a hard time speaking out, or I have a hard time speaking my truth. There's a lot of things that we come to realize through our emotions. And as people in our society, we are not accustomed to dealing with the quote unquote negative emotions. I don't like to label it as that, because for me, emotions are all neutral. We as people feel all the same emotions. Sadness is felt across the board the same way. Grief is felt across the board the same way. Happiness and joy is felt across the board the same way. And if you looked at pictures of people and described all of those emotions, you would be able to point out on a picture and say, that's happiness, that's joy, that's grief, because it looks the same. So there is no reason to shame or judge or even label a good emotion or a bad emotion, because emotions are just our teachers. They teach us where we need to heal, where we have a wound, and where we need to go in order to get to the place that we want to get to. So it's a beautiful teacher, but we don't look at emotions like that. We look at emotions like, okay, I have to shame myself from feeling sadness, grief, anger, anxiety, resentment, blah, blah, blah. But I can only feel happiness, joy, bliss, whatever it may be. But the truth of it is you can't truly feel the one emotion without feeling the other emotion. Because if you're not sure where those things are teaching you to go, how can you feel one without the other? Because you can truly feel it simultaneously. You can love someone, but also be mad at them. You can, we can feel dual emotions, which is a really beautiful thing. And that's what I teach people. I teach people to not necessarily say, okay, this is how you have to be self-aware. It comes naturally as a byproduct of understanding emotions and how we feel, because how we feel is how we can set up boundaries. It's how we can set up like proper communication with other people. It's how we can set up happiness within ourselves. Without understanding how you're feeling, you can't go out into the world and really understand what you're needing.
Yeah, feelings equate to needs in many regards. And I think too, that feelings just in general, especially intense feelings. And I know what you mean about not wanting to use negative or positive or bad or good. Like sometimes I'll use terms like it serves you, it doesn't serve you. But in this case, it's interesting because they all serve us, all the feelings. But I think the more intense feelings, yeah, just in general, we want to tamp down. And sometimes we're taught that in a beautiful episode with Katie Russler on how we grow through grief. We both shared how we grew up in households, and it was a cultural thing where, as soon as you were remotely emotional, and I mean more in that intense way, maybe crying or something like that, it was immediately kind of stamped out. It was like, don't dry your tears. Let's move on. And not allowing that to be a beautiful thing. And when you're describing like how we can feel multiple things at a time and how it's a universal thing for us to feel all the feels, I'm also thinking about how the ones that we may, unintentionally label as negative are just so healing. And that's my take on grief. I think it's a beautiful healing component. Can it be difficult? Sure, of course. But right? But aren't all the worthwhile things difficult sometimes, right?
Well, and that's the thing that we're not really taught. We're not taught to sit with the uncomfortability of our emotions or uncomfortability with ourselves. We have been taught to move away from ourselves. That's why mindset work is so huge. And that's why I'm a little bit on the edge with mindset work alone without the body portion of it, because mindset can a lot of times be searching outside of yourself for an answer, because that's what we've been taught. We've been taught to outsource our information constantly, but you can't outsource an emotion that you're feeling. That has to come from inside of you. And you can't do that unless you are brave enough to be able to tap in to doing that. And there's only certain ways that you can really do that. And breathwork is the safest way I've found for myself, and not safe as in like, it's not a good or bad for you, safe as in like a container where you are held, where you are supported, right? So breathwork is a place where you can emotionally emote the way that your body wants and needs to, because your body is the healer. So it knows what it needs. If you're feeling sadness, it will bring up tears of crying. The only reason why you don't cry is because you are stopping the body from allowing it to cry. So there's a huge difference. And there's a big disconnect between the mind and the body for that specific purpose. That is kind of like our purpose of living here, and understanding how to move back into ourselves rather than outside of ourselves.
When you talk about safety too, what immediately comes up for me is this idea of it being a need that we have, and especially when we are trying to heal trauma. And again, big T, little t, it doesn't have to be something that is catastrophic for it to have a huge impact. And I love what you said earlier about thinking of it like, I'll use the word like a hurdle or block or something like that, where it basically encourages you to shift a direction to sort of compensate for whatever happened. And you're right. We don't, I think, learn really to sit with the uncomfortable emotions and be okay with that and say, it's okay. I can let this pass through. In talking about these intentional breathing patterns and how we do this and how it's like a physical way that we come through calming the body and then being able to explore these things, I'd love to know more about how that works. And also, can we do it wrong?
No. No.
Yay!
So, I mean, breathing is breathing. We all know how to do it.
Right.
And the thing that's so tricky about this is when people ask me, well, can I do this wrong? It's like, well, no, because you know how to breathe. And there's no right way. So because I'm trauma informed, I am also very honoring of the body. So I teach the difference between resistance, showing up for you, and honoring your body's limits. So when something is pushing you to, like, say in a breathwork, deep immersive session, we're in a session and things are just coming up from you and they're triggering maybe a trauma loop, or they're triggering something where you're just like, I am having too much experience. That would be your body's limits. That would be saying, we have had enough healing for today. We need to kind of just back up a little bit. At that point, I bring them down to a different breathing pattern that's a little more gentle, that's a little bit more calming, so they can still go through the experience, still learn what's called pain sitting, which is getting into your body and feeling comfortable with the uncomfortability. We have to increase the capacity of being able to sit with our pain. So I still keep them in the session. I just do it a little bit at a lower pace versus resistance showing up for you of your mind telling you you can't do it or it's not safe or blah, 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 because your mind is always trying to keep you in a safe position. It's always in survival mode. Right. So it doesn't know the difference between real and imaginary. The feeling is the same. And so your brain just gets an alert. And there's differences in what that looks like in a session. And so I teach them a big difference on resistance and honoring your body's limits. So as far as can you do it wrong? No, as long as you know the difference between resistance and honoring your body's limits. And I'm there as a guide too. I teach them and I show them what that is. And I mean, at the end of the day, like, when you've had enough.
Right. And it sounds like any other kind of training in a way where, you push up to a certain point and they're like, okay, it's time to take a break for today. So,
yeah.
And what you were describing too about different levels of breathing and how we do this. So what are those essentially? Are they different depths of breathing or different types or a combination?
You can take depth over speed. That's always my approach, always depth over speed. You always want to bring in deeper energy rather than faster energy. But what I'm talking about as far as like more intense and less intense. Mm-hmm. So I have 2 breath patterns that I work with for those sessions, the meditative sessions. One of them is for people who have a slower system. So a more disassociated system. People who are a little bit more relaxed, people who don't have a lot of like high fluttery feelings of anxiety, people who are a little bit more depressed, not as in like the mind, but their body being a little bit more calm and centered and down. I use that for one of them. And then for the other types of people are people who are very hypervigilant. They're very like, very high energy, very like expressive and like very high vibe. Then I use this other breath pattern for that specific body type, because what I'm trying to do is I'm not trying to bring so much energy into a system that's already hyped up, right? I want to get that system down, and vice versa with the other one. I want to bring more energy and like bring that system up a little bit. Outside of that factor, the one breath gets you really, really deep and it's really intense. And the other breath is a little bit more mild. And that's just the difference of how the breath pattern is. So the one that's really quite a bit more intense is what I call the triactive. So you're doing 2 breaths in through the mouth, 1 breath out through the nose. And it sounds like this. And then the other breath pattern that's a little bit slower, a little bit more gentle is in through the nose, out through the mouth. Mm-hmm. So you can just tell the difference just by how I'm doing that in the energy of what that brings on. So it kind of is a 2-part situation on how I'm assessing what I need to be using for that person.
Mm-hmm. If we were to find a way to, move forward today, finding a way to incorporate this into our lives, what would you recommend? Or is there something, very quick that you could walk us through or a tip that you could leave us with?
Yeah, totally. My favorite breath pattern is the halo active breath pattern, which is in through the nose, out through the mouth.
Okay.
And that one is really good to do when we use it in an integrative style. It's called continual conscious. So that's my favorite breath pattern to use, like pretty much like throughout any time of your day where you are feeling like, okay, I'm getting a little bit amped up. I'm getting a little bit worked up. I'm getting a little bit overreactive or reactive. I'm getting a little bit just like beyond, like my emotions are welling up so much that they're kind of exploding out of me at this point, and I have no control over it. This is a little bit of a place where you can take to reset. You can also do it like when you're driving in the car and when you like get so tight and tense that you're just like, oh, I just need to like breathe for a second. This is the one that you do.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, when I'm resetting myself like this, either if I've had a stressful situation or anything, I usually do it anytime from 3 to 5 times. But the indicator is when I feel that my body is relaxed, when I feel that it is now coming over me and I'm like, okay, I feel good. So continual conscious breath pattern looks like this. It's in through the nose, out through the mouth, and no pausing at the beginning of the inhale or the ending of the exhale. We're just moving it through in a continual pattern. So it sounds like this. So you can do it fast like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're really needing a reset, like you're just really tight, you can do it deeper. So it'll sound like this.
It makes me want to breathe along with you. So the loop, this is, I think, a key point, is that it needs to be continuous and not like stopping in between. Mm-hmm. But the pace is really going to be what you make of it, like however long you're exhaling, right? And I think that'll mm-hmm. differ from person to person and from the situation. But it's really, I think, consciously slowing and deepening our breaths with that pattern.
Mm-hmm. And you can tell sometimes this is an automatic response that will happen for you. You're like, oh, I just need to take a deep breath right now. Mm-hmm. That's literally just your body communicating to you like, hello, we need to take on more energy. Like you're not giving me enough.
Right.
So when we take that natural response and do it on purpose several times throughout the day, I mean, sometimes I do it like 100 times a day. Sometimes I'm doing it 5 times a day, right? Like it just depends on where I'm at for that day. And like you said too, it varies from person to person, from situation to situation. The tool is the most important thing. And then you can take the tool and do with it what you want. But when we're allowing our body to give it that rest that it's needing without asking for permission, or without the body being like, hello, lady, like I need this right now. If we just give it, we will be able to like be in such a better place. Like even just me doing that right now, I'm like, whoa, I feel so much like different,
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm thinking too that, so there's a lot of intuitive response to this, but as you said, when there's intentional placement, if we can start to think about the times in which we do get riled up, and we know those, there are a number of places mm-hmm. where we can be like, okay, I know after I, do a certain drive, or, after I don't know, for me, after I do the scramble in the morning to get the kids to school or whatever mm-hmm. it happens to be, right? There are certain times, and I talk a lot from the productivity coaching standpoint of paying attention to our transitions between tasks so that we don't take the energy from one task into another. Not that that's always a bad thing. Sometimes it's good energy. If you have really excited energy and you bring it into the next task, that can be a good thing. But for the most part, it's important to have that time in between to allow yourself a break and to make sure that the energy matches. And an example that I give is, if we're doing something that's stressful and very, energetic, but it's not just energetic, it's frenetic, really. And we're doing that. And then we immediately go and we grab lunch. What happens? We're scarfing the food. We're not in the moment. Maybe we're not listening to our body's cues and not realizing when we're full, and it's like it's a host of issues that can happen. So I actually do a guided meditation, a 2-minute, guided meditation based on that. And it's a similar concept, but I love the idea of taking your breathwork technique and applying it to that kind of thing, because really, how long does it take to do 3 to 5 of these breathing cycles to reset yourself?
15 seconds.
Right. That's even better than 2 minutes.
15 seconds of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. No math pro here, but that's even better. Yeah. So one other thing I wanted to address was something that popped up. You and I follow each other on Instagram, and I love what you're posting and what you're sharing. And there was a post that you had about sort of using breath work in terms of calming the tendency to overreact, and I talk about proactive versus reactive, or just being in reaction mode. And I like the word overreact because it's talking about like varying degrees of how we're just like immediately responding and not taking that moment that we need. So would you share a little bit about the tip that you gave? Because I love that.
Yeah, totally. So overreaction is defined by me as a place where we are just inside of our emotions too much and we can't properly think about a proper reaction. So we just move and it's explosive. And a lot of times that's where things that are said that you don't mean, or actions that are done that you don't mean. And it's an explosion of this energy coming out of you. Mm-hmm. A reaction is a place where you have calmed, you have centered yourself, and then you have decided to produce an action that is of a circumstance. So it's defined by me just a tiny bit differently, but that's what I meant by that. Mm-hmm. So when we are using breathwork as a tool to manage and decipher between overreaction and reaction, when we take a circumstance that riles our emotion, that triggers us, that brings up this welling amount of energy that we have not dealt with, that's why it's welling up like that.
Right.
We can take a pause for a second. And this takes some practice. You're not going to be perfect at this. No one's perfect at this. I'm not even perfect at this. But in a hypothetical perfect situation, you would take a pause, do the continual conscious breath pattern for a second, you remove yourself and come back, or just deal with the problem. That would be the reaction. Mm-hmm. The overreaction would be to just immediately like go into whatever, response that is happening. So in order for us to do that, we have to be able to decipher that, okay, all of these emotions are welling up inside of me. I am going to literally explode at this person or the situation or by myself or whatever. And in some respects, that is healthy to do. But when we're talking about this, we want to decipher when that's coming up for us.
Right.
And then what we want to do is feel that emotion and feel that emotion all the way. So say anger is coming up for you. Someone did something that's triggering your anger. They may not have even done anything to where you are angry at. It's just triggering anger. So you can sit here and you can give it a name or a color. And you want to pinpoint where it's at in your body and just sit with that anger. Be okay with that anger. Allow the anger to be there. Give it permission to be there. It's all good that you're here. There's no shaming. There's no judgment. We just want to understand and say, okay, I'm really angry right now. This is really angering me. I am angry. And then pinpoint where that's coming from. A lot of people that comes from like their stomach, that comes from their throat. Like a lot of my anger will come from my throat, where I am just like feeling stifled that I can't be heard or, talk to or whatever. Some people, it comes from their heart because they're just heartbroken or they have a lot of grief and there's anger there. Some people, it comes from their stomach because their power is being taken away and they're giving their power away and they feel like they're powerless. So depending on where that's coming from, you have to understand where that's sitting in your body. Then you can identify what it is that I'm missing. What am I not giving myself enough? So if my anger is coming from my throat, I know that I am angry because I'm either not speaking out or I'm not being heard. If my anger is coming from my heart, I know that I'm either heartbroken or I'm dealing with grief or I'm dealing with sadness. So then I need to attack it that way. And if it's coming from my stomach, I know that I'm somehow giving my power away to another human being, or I feel powerless within myself. Like I feel like maybe I don't have control or I don't have enough boundaries, things like that. Then at that point, once you've assessed the emotion, that's the step 2, where that root problem is coming from. Then you're going to journal it out and really understand and say, okay, where have all the times been where I have been angry, whether it's as a child or whether it's as a teenager or whether it's as an adult, where I was not able to speak my truth or where I held myself back from saying something I truly wanted to say that was in my power. Where, if it's coming from our heart, also journaling that emotion and saying, okay, where is my sadness? Where is my grief? What do I need to deal with here? And journaling that out just fully, just allowing yourself to fully write that. And the more that you do this exercise, the more you can realize like, okay, these are all the things that I really, truly need to work on within my body so that I can get to a place of proper reaction and say, okay, so right now I'm feeling really angry. I don't know how to tell you what I need to tell you right now. That stands within my power. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes and come back. And then I can be able to clearly communicate to you what it is that I'm needing or wanting from you. Same with your heart, same with your power, right? So it just puts you in a place of being able to self-assess your own emotions and then clearly say a boundary or say what it is that you're needing and wanting, because no one can read your mind. But you also can't communicate it and say it to somebody if you don't actually know what's going on with inside of you.
Right. So this is a powerful practice of working toward that self-awareness, practicing this idea of saying there is something going on and I need to understand it. And I think when we come from a place of understanding and we are able to create context around something, we can manage it so much better. Mm-hmm. That was excellent. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for that.
You're so
All right.
welcome.
I think that's the perfect place to wrap up. So you ready to have a little fun with me and do a rapid wrap up? Okay.
Yes.
Would you please fill in the blank. The song that always makes me dance is?
Oh, right now it's Fantasy by Mariah Carey.
Nice. Okay. Well, that will be going on the Positively Living podcast dance playlist on Spotify, volume 2. So that will go on
that's
there.
A good dance song.
That's a good dance song. Okay. How about the quote or mantra I share all the time is?
For me, really, it's just about reminding myself when I'm out of alignment. So if I feel myself getting into that overreactive state, I tell myself and I call my power back to myself and say, I am allowed to be in alignment. I'm allowed to be in peace. I understand I'm out of alignment. I understand I have disrupted my own peace. That's not really the mantra, but it's the philosophy behind how I live my life, where I try to really assess where I'm out of alignment.
Well, what I love about what you just said was the phrase in there, I'm allowed to be at peace. That's just so fitting for what we're talking about today. Okay. Now, how about a resource, book, or app that makes my life easier or that I love to recommend?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. The biggest one for me is Judgment Detox by Gabrielle Bernstein. She's amazing. She's like seriously one of my mentors. I look up to her so much. Also, The Universe Has Your Back. That's another one by her. Mm-hmm. And then the one I just bought that I am like sitting on the edge of my seat to get, like I have been following the holistic psychologist for the moment she like started her whole platform. She has a book that is How to Do the Inner Work by Nicole LaPera. Mm-hmm. That's her name. And I just purchased it yesterday. I cannot wait. It's going to be magic.
Awesome. All right. And last, but definitely not least, what or whom are you grateful for today, Sarah?
Oh my gosh, I'm grateful for so many things. Where do I start? Honestly, I'm truly grateful that I'm able to be here with you, sharing this practice, sharing my knowledge, sharing everything that I know about breathwork. Like that's something that is just like, I'm so eternally appreciative for.
Well, I am most certainly grateful for you and this conversation and what you're bringing to the world. So speaking of the world, where can the world find you online? Where can we go to hang out with you more?
Instagram is the best place to get in touch with me, to follow me, to hear what I have to say and to learn from me. My Instagram handle is at breathe_Sarah with an H. You can reach out to me via DM. You can absorb all my content that you need to absorb. On my page is a link to click in my bio for where you can hop on a call with me like this. We can talk about whatever it is that you need to talk about, and we can see if it's a right fit to either work together or how breathwork can impact you. But Instagram is the best platform.
Okay, I'll make sure to have that link in the show notes, along with links to the books that you referenced. And of course, if you find me on Instagram, I'm following Sarah, so you can connect to her that way as well. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for shining your light in this world and for sharing it with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so blessed.
Thank you for joining me today. Your time is precious and limited, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. If you have feedback, questions, or want to schedule a chat, head to positivelyproductive.com/connect. And if you are looking for any of the resources referenced on the podcast, from books to products to training and more, go to positivelyproductive.com/resources.